First story, the new house. In the late 90s, my wife and I bought a house from an elderly deaf-mute couple who had lived there for more than 50 years. The house stood on the edge of town, next to a cemetery, and its windows looked straight out onto it. The price was very attractive, and we urgently needed a place to live, so the proximity of graves didn't bother us. Besides, we weren't the nervous type. However, the first night in the new house turned into a nightmare. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke to strange noises and screams. They pierced the night's silence, making my heart race with dread. I began walking through the house searching for the source of the noise, trying not to wake my wife. Thoughts ran through my head that it might be my imagination, but the fear wouldn't let go. To my horror, I discovered the sounds were coming from the basement. I stood at the door trying to guess what could have caused such dreadful cries. Curiosity and fear battled inside me. I took a deep breath and forced myself to go down. After struggling to open the heavy door, I descended the creaking steps. The darkness in the basement was thick, and only a weak beam from the flashlight I had taken with me cut through it. The sounds grew louder, and I felt a chill run down my spine. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard some squeals and a piercing cry. "Help!" It was a plea full of despair that froze me with terror on the spot. I didn't know what to do, and in a panic I rushed out of the basement and back to the bedroom where my wife was still asleep. The next evening when we went to bed, the screams began again. This time my wife woke up and, looking at me frightened, asked, "Did you hear that?" I nodded, and we both realized it wasn't just my imagination. The sounds repeated every night, growing louder and more insistent each time. Our nights became sleepless. We tried closing the windows, we turned on music, but none of it helped. The strange cries, full of pain and terror, gave us no rest and left us feeling helpless. We were skeptics, not believers in anything supernatural, yet we had encountered something that defied explanation. Desperate, we asked acquaintances for advice, and one of them suggested calling a priest to bless the house and the basement. We decided to try anything to get rid of those awful noises. The next day, a priest came with prayers and holy water. He went through the whole house, including the basement, saying prayers and sprinkling holy water everywhere. After his visit, the strange sounds from the basement stopped. The night was quiet, and we were finally able to sleep peacefully. Still, the realization that we had faced something inexplicable left a deep mark on our hearts. Sometime later, having saved enough for a new place, we decided to sell the house. Despite its attractive price, we understood it had become a source of fear and anxiety for us. We found buyers happy to purchase a cheap home, unaware of the horrors we had faced. Now, living elsewhere, I understand that our world is not so simple. It is full of mysteries. Second story, the child of the red candle. Once upon a time, there lived a lonely girl. She was simple, neither a beauty nor particularly clever, but not ugly either. In the village where she lived, there were many girls and few men. It happened that nobody paid her any attention, and she remained alone to grow old. More than anything, she wanted a child. She never managed to have one in the usual way, so she went to a witch. In exchange for a ham hock and 3 skeins of homemade yarn, the witch gave her a candle with a red wick. On All Saints' Day, she was to prepare a dinner of 13 dishes, which must include bloody roast beef, fried frog legs, and dandelion wine. Exactly at midnight, she was to take off her cross, extinguish all the lights, and light the candle with the red wick. The candle had to be placed on the windowsill of a window facing west. Then she was to sit at a table set for 2 and wait. That is what she did. Our heroine came to the next morning in her bed. The candle was extinguished, the dinner eaten, the wine drunk, but by whom and when, she did not know. 9 months later, she gave birth to a boy. The boy grew up handsome and affectionate. He loved his mother dearly, and she adored him. Only once a year, on the night of All Saints, the boy would have an attack. He would thrash in bed, grind his teeth, and mutter something through clenched jaws. In the morning, he would remember nothing and be an angelic child for the rest of the year. This went on for 12 years, and then All Saints' Day came again. The next morning, a neighbor dropped by to invite them to Mass. Nobody answered the knock, so the curious neighbor pushed the hut door. It was not locked. Inside the hut, everything was soaked in blood. and strange symbols were painted on the walls. The frightened woman hurried to the church and told what she had seen. A crowd, led by Father Raul de Ragan, the local pastor, made haste for the presumed scene of the crime. Accompanied by 3 brave men, Father Raul entered the house and in the bedroom found the torn body of the housewife, dismembered like livestock after slaughter. The abdomen was ripped open. The internal organs were missing. Suspicion fell on the woman's son. His body was not found, and Father Raul concluded that the son had killed his mother and performed some demonic ritual. Those present then remembered where the boy had come from. After a while, volunteers dragged in the witch. She was beaten and tortured. Under torture, the witch confessed that she... Third story, the interview. I work as an HR manager. I was conducting an interview for a vacancy. The woman was late. She called and asked me to wait, which was fine since the candidate seemed interesting. She arrived when no one else was in the office. We sat and talked. She spoke coherently, nothing to criticize, but I kept thinking something was off. Looking closer, I noticed her stare was glassy, her face very pale, and her hands shook oddly. I got scared, but I didn't show it. We finished the interview. I said goodbye, and she said she would wait for me. My heart nearly sank. I thought, what if she's some kind of maniac? I ran through all the worst possibilities. I gathered myself. We left the office. I turned my back to her to close the door, then turned around. No one was there. I was surprised and headed for the exit thinking I'd catch up with her, but I didn't see anyone on the way. We have cameras in the corridor that record who comes and goes. Curious how she could have left so fast. The next day I asked my supervisor, who has all the recordings on his computer, to check the footage from the previous evening. I begged him for a long time and he finally agreed. We watched it, and it turned out that during the time she supposedly came and left, no one except me appeared on camera. She hadn't come at all, apparently. I was in shock. I called the number the woman had used to call me. It doesn't exist. I ran to the office to check her resume on the computer. Nothing. I had a meltdown. I felt like I was losing my mind. I glanced at my desk and there was a note that read, "We'll meet again, Olga." That was her name. I ran out of the office in tears with that note. Ran around the office shouting, "Who did this?" And everyone looked at me like I was crazy. Now I'm at home, jumpy at every sound, even though my husband is here. I'm thinking of quitting. To hell with it.